Here's something that we're probably going to spend a decent amount of time on over the next couple days. This is something that is very, 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 very scary to me. Okay, so six or 7 years ago, people on the right, or the alt-right, really back then, were saying that people on the left were going to be just as radicalized as Nazis. They were basically. Most people said that it was ridiculous. I agree that it was ridiculous. And then maybe 4 years ago, I started saying people on the left are becoming about as radicalized as Nazis and it's probably not good. They're okay with lying. It seems like in select instances they condemn violence against certain people that they probably shouldn't be, et cetera, et cetera. That's not good. Over the past few days, I think that we've moved like past the stochastic terrorism part of the left. We are in an insane timeline where a lot of people on the left are making insane validations or supports of Hamas killing civilians. It is wild the amount of ultra high engagement tweets that I've seen from lefties that basically are celebrating Hamas's attacks or explicitly supporting Hamas killing Israeli civilians. That is not good. And I think we're like one step removed from like the internet radicalization to murdering people in real life arc. We're like one step removed, I think, from lefties doing terror attacks in real life. That is not good. It's very scary. And I think more people need to be having a more stringent response or like hardcore reaction, not reaction, I say, but like response and disavowal to these types of talking points. The idea that, yeah, this is what a revolution looks like. It's murdering civilians. It's flying into festivals and dance parties and killing and abducting people. That shit is wild to me. People like Hassan's statements, that Frogan loser, her statements. I think I've seen things by Denims. These types of statements are absolutely unhinged. It's so because the relations are so complicated. There's no one video or article you can read to get all the facts. Yes, and then also, I want to remind people of like, there's two things that you need to have in your head a lot. Okay, there's two things that you need to have in your head a lot right now. One is something that a lot of people are talking about, and that is that the history of a region is really important. Okay, that is true. That is true. But there's a second thing that's also true, and that is that history is totally irrelevant and means nothing. Okay? Now, in some ways, history can be instructive to say, like, how did we get here? How did the situations end up where they are right now? Okay? History can be important in giving us answers. However, it is total bullshit when people try to use history to justify like modern day conditions or to try to make statements about modern day people. We know this intuitively because when we're in the United States, like how many times have you heard a conservative say, oh, well, the Democrats were the ones that opposed civil rights? And what's the response? Yeah, in the fucking 60s. Why the fuck would I care about what the Democratic Party said in the 60s? Like, if you want to be honest, I don't give a fuck about the Republican Party in the 2000s. Like, do you think the Republicans under Bush have literally anything to do with the Republican Party under Donald Trump? These are fundamentally different people. The neocons of the 2000s are nothing like the Trump-era Republicans that exist today. And that's just one political question, which is, where do people stand politically? One political question revolving one political party in one country in just 20 years. So the idea that people say, I'm not going to sit here and say history doesn't matter, right? Having a historical analysis or understanding of things is important to show us like how we got here. But people that are trying to justify certain things based on history, it's like, oh, well, we know that Israelis think this because in 1948, when they were given their land, or in 1962, we're like, bro, no. That's not how anything in the political world works anywhere in the world. Nobody in the world does that. Nobody thinks that way. Nobody does anything like that. Like, bro, in the span of like 20 years, dude, after World War I, you got the dissolution of like four of like the largest nations on the planet, okay? Things look way different pre and post World War I in the course of 15 years. right? People look way different around the world pre and post World War II in 15 years. Look at how different the world was in the 80s versus the 2000s, pre or post the Soviet Union. Yeah, I want to be really clear that when you have people running around saying like, oh, historical analysis is necessary to understand everything, blah, 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 kind of, but also kind of not. You can't use things that happened in the 20th century to justify like terrorism in the 21st century. That's insane. If you start going that route and using those types of justifications, you can justify almost any type of violence imaginable, right? I could take a group of white soldiers and go on an SJW crusade through almost all of Central Africa, every black person we find, because they were the ones that sold the original slaves, right? They were the ones that empowered white colonialists to buy and sell people based on this color of their skin, right? That's just an insane. Or I could justify the Aztecs tearing through and murdering everybody in probably Central and North America, probably depending on how far north you go, right? Or at least Central America. Or I could justify natives stealing arms from the US government and then going south and fighting Aztec people from, I don't even know who their descendants are. Like, it's just a wild thing to say that, like, we're going to use a historical analysis to decide, 20 years ago or 100 years ago, how we're going to treat people today. Nothing in the world works that way. Nobody makes decisions like that. There are no Aztecs left. I'm sure they have descendants, right? I have no idea. I don't know shit about Central American indigenous people. But yeah, nobody in the world thinks this way. No politician makes decisions like that. No individual thinks this way. Anytime somebody starts saying, well, actually, we need a historical, they're probably trying to justify some shit that is unjustifiable. Because if you've got to go back more than 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years to try to explain why you're doing what you're doing now, it's probably because what you're trying to do now is really f***ed. Okay? Yeah. Just keep that in mind whenever you say about, or whenever you see people saying this, like, oh, like historical, blah, 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 like bullshit. History is really important to tell us how we got to where we are today. That's really important. But it doesn't morally justify what's going on today. Meanwhile, Destiny always brings up the Holodomor. When have I brought up the Holodomor to criticize Putin? What? I bring up the Holodomor when people want to talk about the Soviet Union because the Holodomor happened in the Soviet Union. Are you f***ing retarded? Why would they? Israel bombed civilians, so you bomb them back? While it is true, Israel has killed civilians, I'm pretty sure nobody argues. Are there people on the left arguing that Hamas doesn't use civilians as shields? I don't know like what level of propaganda we're on right now for anti-Israel. Also, if I could implore my fan base to keep one thing in mind, okay? And now this might change in the future. But I don't think that the sentiment right now among the left is anti-Semitic. It is heavily anti-Zionist, but when you guys are running around saying like, oh, these people hate Jews, these people are anti-Semitic, that's not true. It's anti-US foreign policy. It's America, and it's anti-Zionist, but it might become anti-Semitic in the future, but it hasn't taken that anti-Semitic bend yet. Just be aware of that when you're criticizing these people, because you're missing like what's going on, or you're missing why people are so like ass-pained on the left over everything. It's just because of a hatred for U.S. foreign policy and a hatred for Israel in general. It's not like, I don't think it's as anti-Semitic as people make it out to be. Now, there might be some elements of anti-Semitism in it, but when I look at like the really large figures on the left that are championing this stuff, it's not, yeah.